Great, hi everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Yeah, great. I'm seeing people nodding. So I'm Emma Williams. I'm going to be running this session on large and small grants today. There's Carrie Winstanley who looks after the small grants. Can't be with us, but she's provided a slide which I will be able to talk through. So we have 30 minutes to discuss and talk about the different types of grants that are run within the PSGB. And you may have seen the slide when you joined, the Wiley slide, just acknowledging that Wiley are sponsoring this session, and they are the sponsors of our large grants within the PSGB as well. So we're very grateful to Wiley for that. So I'm just going to share my screen and show you the slide that Carrie's provided. And I thought I would talk first of all about the small grant scheme. And I believe, I don't know if you were in any of the seminar, the advice session earlier on today, I believe that some of the Steph was just telling me there was some discussion about the grants then as well. So if you were there and you wanted to pick up anything on small grants that came up in that session, do please ask. So I'll just talk through Carrie's slide, and then I will just leave it open for you to ask any questions. So if anybody's here and they wanted to talk about the small grants scheme, then you can ask questions about that. So I'll just try and share the slide. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this slide. This is also available on the conference platform, so you can download it if you wanted to have a look at it yourselves after the session. So as I say, Carrie Winstanley runs the PSGB small grant scheme. So the small grants and the large grants are two separate schemes. They're sort of administered very differently, and they are overseen by different people, as though should be obvious. The small grants are grants of up to £750 that can be awarded to members of the society. It is for all the grants a stipulation that anyone applying has been a member of the society for a year before they're eligible to have either a large or a small grant. So that's sort of standing condition across all the schemes. With the small grant schemes, they are, so that it's up to £750, which can be awarded to a member of the society within a year, any 1 year. And the purpose of the funds of under the small grant scheme are more or less, I probably, Carrie may say this is inaccurate if she was here, but we think in terms of these conference attendance, to help people to attend international conferences. The grant can cover your fees for the conference, your travel, your accommodation, subsistence when you're there. So the sort of conference attendance, if you needed support for conference attendance from PSGB, then you would apply to the small grant scheme. It's also possible to use those funds to support research. So if there is some area of research that you think you need a sort of small injection of money to help you with, whether that's administrative support, access to specialist libraries, or certain fees connected to the research you're doing, that's also eligible under the small grants. And then also collaborations, so national/international. There could be a sort of one-off event that you wanted to put on that wouldn't be funded under, wouldn't be sort of appropriate for the large grant scheme. It might not be something that is able to be funded under as a branch event. So if you have a sort of idea for a collaboration, you can apply to the small grant scheme for that. As it says, the applications should be supported by a clear rationale with a distinct focus and some tangible expected outcomes. So whether that's a proposal for special issue, although that probably wouldn't necessarily be, that probably a bit too much for a small grant. It might be more like you're thinking of writing a paper, or you want this small grant to help you to go to a conference, to help you support your research for your PhD or something like that. That's all fine to say as part of the outcomes that you'd expect from having the money. One good thing about the small grant scheme is also that it's open all year round, so that there isn't a sort of application window, and that's the difference again with the large grants. So you can apply to CARI for the small grant at any point. It's sort of a responsive grant. So if there's a conference coming up, or if you just wanted to put on a seminar or some sort of event, you can apply at any point throughout the year. Just a few notes on what's not covered under the small grant scheme. We don't cover fees for the PSGB conference, because that's this annual conference, because that's already subsidised by Wiley. It's already something that we subsidise, so you can't apply for a small grant for our own annual conference. We also don't cover doctoral fees under the small grant scheme. That's part of the large grants, which I will go on to discuss. We don't cover purchasing equipment like laptops, etc. And also we wouldn't cover branch events under the small grant scheme, because they will fall under the sort of branch, the PSGB branch funds. So if you've got an event that you wanted to put on that could be aligned to the branch of the PSGB that you're part of, you should talk to the branch secretary in the first instance about funding through that option. So that is I might leave the slide up just while people have questions, in case anything occurs to anyone while other people are asking questions. But if at this point anyone had any questions they wanted to ask about the small grant scheme, please do ask. As I said, I'm not the chair of the small grants, but I will do my best to answer you.
Hi, Emma, if you don't mind, could I just ask you,
Yeah.
Vicky and I applied for a small grant for the Philosophy of Education Reading Network to cover the price of the website hosting. Would that be covered? We just haven't had any response.
Okay.
So I don't know.
This is one of these instances where it would be helpful to have CARI here.
Sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I just thought I'd bring it up since we're here.
Yeah, would be worth following up, I think, with CARI.
Yeah.
She said, I think somewhere, at the bottom of the slide, sometimes it will take a little longer to get back to people. But normally she is very quick at getting back to you about the applications. So it might be that it's something that was needed to be checked. Because I suppose it's a bit of a unusual one, and that it doesn't obviously fall into the three purposes that are outlined there.
So it would fall into international collaborations, but
well, I think actually it's a good point for all the grants to kind of note the changes that are that we're seeing in applications as a result of new ways of working that we're adopting. So it could also be that it's one of those areas that we need to have a think about going forward, because it might be that these sort of online collaborations and support for that sort of online platforms is going to be something that people need more than travel nowadays. So it's a helpful thing for us to take note of, I think. But sorry you've not heard back, but I think I would follow up with CARI to see, because it could be that it's either just part of a bigger conversation that she wanted to have, or that it might just be one that once term time starts again, things go back to normal. Thanks so much. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, well, if no one has anything at the moment about the small grants, I can, I'll stop sharing the screen and I will introduce the large grants. And then obviously if you have anything, oh dear, if you have anything you wanted to ask and you thought of anything, then just go for it. Hang on, I'm not sure how I lost my button to stop sharing screen. Ah, okay, here we go. Great, so I'm no longer sharing the screen, am I? No. Okay, good. We don't use Zoom at Warwick, so it's actually a little bit strange for me using Zoom in this sort of way. Um, okay, so moving on then to talk a bit about the large grants scheme that we run. Um, as I said, I'm chair of the large grants, and I've been on the large grants committee for um, I think 3 years now. I've been chair for the last 2 years, and the large grants are sorry, excuse me. They are a annual scheme that is open within a particular window. Usually they open around November time for applications and close around January, with the applications being announced in time for the annual conference in March. So it's a sort of 6-month-ish type window that we work within on the large grants committee. And the large grants are quite diverse in their type, actually. There's three different types of grants, three main different types of grants that we allocate under the large grant schemes. One is the doctoral studentships. So doctoral studentships are there to support doctoral work, obviously. Um, Individuals can apply for up to £5,000 to support their fees. It's usually for their fees, but they can be used for a wide variety of things. But the doctoral studentships are also studentships that we will consider renewing. So if you have a doctoral studentship in 1 year, you are welcome to apply again in the second year of your study, or the next year, to continue to support you. There Usually we have about £20,000 in our allocation per year to award doctoral studentships, and so we will fund around 4 studentships, but it depends on the volume of applications we have. Sometimes we have a year where there's a lot of good applications. We might then fund some 100% of £5,000. Some others we might fund a smaller proportion, depending on how the applications have been graded. Once you apply for any of the grants, your application is then referred on to the large grants committee, who assess the application individually and then convene to discuss the outcomes depending on the individual scorings that your application has been given. So they are looked at in a number of times in that sense. Sorry, someone's in the waiting room. So the doctoral studentships, as I say, they're sort of eligible for doctoral students up to £5,000. You're eligible to apply again in the next year. The other main large grant scheme that we run is the seminar series grants. So seminar series are for colleagues that very often people will apply to these in groups and teams. The size of the award is up to £10,000. We don't pay for speaker fees within PSGB in general. So the fees that are awarded for the seminar series are more to sort of support the putting on of the seminar series in terms of room hire, travel, accommodation for participants, these kinds of things. Again, that's an annual scheme, and it's one of the things about the seminar series grants and the miscellaneous grant, which we'll talk about in a moment, is that we like to see a sort of clear indication of the outcomes of what the money will be used for. So there is, on the website, there is the terms and conditions of the scheme, and there's an overview of all the things that you need to include within your application to these schemes. And just to highlight there the importance of the outcomes for these large grant schemes, so the seminar series and the miscellaneous grant. And also a new thing to be introduced from this year is that we are strongly encouraging people who want to apply for these schemes to also get in touch with the journal editor before the editor of JOPE before the application, to discuss possibilities of the outputs for JOPE, because these are PSGB grants. So we would like to see that the grant holders are considering publishing with their results with the PSGB journal. So the seminar series grants are the sort of main, I say that's the most popular large grant scheme outside of the doctoral studentships. We also run what's called a miscellaneous grant. And this probably falls a bit between a small grant and a large grant. So the size of the miscellaneous grant is up to £3,000. And typically they're for kind of one-off events that you might want to put on. So maybe it's a slightly larger conference or a large seminar, or it's funding to enable you to get going with your research. Perhaps you might need to visit some archives or something like that. So it's a kind of injection of cash into your research, can also be applied via a miscellaneous grant for that. So yeah, that's £3,000. So it's sort of similar to what you could apply to a small grant for, but obviously it's a bit more money. And again, that's assessed in the same way as the large grants and the doctoral studentships, assessed by the large grants committee. And also with the miscellaneous grants, we would like to see the account of what you're aiming to do in terms of outputs, whether that's just plans or whether you've got, definite articles or things that you want to write as a result. The large grants are eligibility is very similar to the small grants in that you have to have been a member of the society for a year, and other than that, you're eligible. You can apply. You can apply, as I say, with a collaboration with other academics, as long as they're also members of the society. Obviously, not everyone taking part in your event or your seminar needs to be a member of the society, but the applicants do and need to have held membership for a year. So I think, one thing I could say, I suppose, before I open up to questions, is that what makes a really good application across all of these schemes is the awareness of the philosophical and the educational element of the project coming together. I think that's one of the key criteria, the sort of core criteria that the applications are assessed on, and as well as the kind of rigor, academic merit of the whole application, showcasing its relevance for philosophy of education, where the philosophical and the educational side of it are well balanced, is a very often that's the sort of sign of a very good application. We don't fund empirical research under these grants, doctoral or seminar or miscellaneous, because there are lots of other pots of money that are around for empirical research and education. Obviously, we're a philosophy of education society. Part of the point of having these grants is to support the work of philosophers of education. Very often we're not eligible for many grants that are around, so it does need to be the approach of the project, especially for a doctoral project, needs to be substantially philosophical to be considered. It's maybe also worth mentioning, in relation to the large grants, the British Academy special funds as well, because the British Academy run biannually a scheme up to £10,000, a sort of small grant scheme, and PSGB partners with the British Academy in those schemes. So that an application to that funding scheme would go through the British Academy, website, but if the British Academy see it as a promising proposal, they will refer it on to us and see if we want to be a partner in funding that. So again, that will be, if it's referred to us, one of the criteria that we'll be looking for is it a philosophical project? Primarily, we wouldn't fund something that was empirical. So I think what might be helpful is if I stop talking for a minute and see if anyone had come to this with any questions. It's quite hard to judge whether people came with burning questions, and I want to obviously give you time to ask if you did. So I will open it up to questions about any of the grant schemes.
Sorry, I'll just jump in. I
Yeah.
was trying to raise my hand, but I think my background is making it hard to see.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Thank you for the information. I was wondering if there are specific requirements regarding the participants, whether these are specifically located within the UK or whether this involves members who are also, in international contexts. I'm located in the US, but I've been at PSGB for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And whether this involves, say, you're applying for a seminar grant, which might, involve like 5 or 6 scholars. Would all of them need to be PSGB members? And if so, would they need to be located in the UK, or is it in general available to every member?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. It's not only restricted to academics within the UK. So yeah, you're more than eligible to apply if you're part of an international team. Even if it doesn't involve members from the UK at all, that's still something that we would you'd still be eligible as long as the project fits in with the PSGB kind of aims and scope of the schemes and things. So no, that's absolutely fine. I mean, one thing that I didn't mention, which probably I should have done, was going back a bit to Elizabeth's question as well, was in terms of the international travel that might be involved with some of these international groups. And I think now we have had so much online conferencing and seminars, we are thinking a bit more about the dimension of travel in terms of sustainability and value for money, which the applications are judged on. So I would say I think obviously a face-to-face events internationally are very costly in terms of travel and things like that. So it's something to really consider when you're putting together the application. Can you kind of think of other formats or have more of a blended approach or something like that, which would give more value for money for the project, if it was a seminar series. I'm imagining something like that. But yeah, internationally you can apply. Anyone that's named on the application as the kind of principal applicants has to be a member for a year. Yeah, so you should apply with other members. But if you've got a kind of a list of who's going to attend the seminars, that wouldn't have to have everyone a member of PSGB. And of course, great if you're bringing in academics in other areas who aren't currently PSGB members, and you'll bring them into philosophy of education. That's a great thing. So we definitely would support that. It's just the person who has the money or is given the money has to have been the member for for at least 1 year. Yeah, thank you. But it's a good question. So yes, international collaboration is very much encouraged. But as I say, I would bear in mind the value for money and sustainability policies within PSGB at present.
Emma, I'll
Yes.
jump in there.
Okay.
One of the conditions of the doctoral bursary was that PSGB receive a copy of the finished PhD. Does that just satisfy the organisation that the work was complete, or is there a repository that people can access?
Yeah, great. Thanks, John. It is something that we're looking into, doing something with the website around probably not putting people's PhDs on the website, but sort of showcasing the projects that we have supported through the large grants. I think that would be a really nice thing to do. Currently, yeah, you're right. At the end of your grant, you asked to submit a report. So that's PhD grants and seminar series or miscellaneous. And very often those have in the past gone into the newsletter, or they've been sort of showcased in some way via the website. But I think with the new website, it'd be quite nice to have a page that showcases the things that we funded. But yeah, in terms of submitting the PhD to the society, it's just to sort of show what came from it, and it's very interesting for us to see as well, see what people have done. Yeah. It's worth maybe saying as well, if you're not within an institution, you can still apply for the miscellaneous grants and the large grants. They're not only reserved for academics. So if you're a sort of independent scholar or a teacher, you're very welcome to have to apply for these grants as well, and to host a seminar series or a miscellaneous grant. Okay, I've been told we have 5 minutes to go, so if anyone wanted to ask anything, now would be the time.
If no one has any questions, if I can jump in one more time. Oh, sorry, I'll let Olga, who hasn't asked.
Okay. Oh yeah, Olga, sorry, I see your hands up.
No problem. Hi, so I have a quick question about the doctoral grants. So does it mean that any project that has any empirical part will be excluded? Or for example, if the project is interdisciplinary, then it will be somehow decided based on the project per se. Yes, this is my question.
Yeah, thanks, Olga. Yeah, good question. It depends really on this individual project very often, but really if it's a sort of, if it's in the main a philosophical study, then it's eligible. If it's in the main empirical study with maybe some philosophical elements, it's probably not going to be eligible, because the main approach of the study should be philosophical in character. So yeah, we're not saying that if you want to have any empirical element to your project, we wouldn't fund it. Indeed, my own British Academy project has an empirical element to it, but it's not the main part of what I'm doing. I'm doing mainly philosophical work, and the empirical bit is sort of supporting that in some way. So, you know, great to be adventurous and interdisciplinary with your methodologies, definitely, but it does need to be primarily a philosophical project. That's what this grant scheme is there to support. So it wouldn't be appropriate for this scheme if it's mainly an empirical study. But yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a judgment call on the application. You're right, because obviously people are more and more becoming interdisciplinary in these ways. But you know, we have to balance up how far this is something that we kind of classify as a philosophical study, or something we can justify supporting under a sort of philosophy of education grant. Just to say, because I realize we're running out of time, there is more information on the PSGB website about the grants. If you go onto the large grants and the small grants page, you should be able to download the scheme notes from last year. And just to flag up, they are last year's ones. They might be edited slightly for the coming year. And we will be hopefully opening the grant scheme again in November for 2022. So thanks everyone for coming. Hopefully it was useful for you. And obviously if you have any further questions, then, you know, feel free to chat to me in whatever way we do during this conference, and or email me, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you have about your applications that way as well. So yes, do just get in touch if you want to, and I hope that you will consider applying for one of the grants.